Okay, so we know TTSA had or has metamaterials, supposedly material from alien ships that were gifted to them by, or sold to them by people like Linda Moulton Howe. And she just sold them a piece of material, the famous bismuth piece, for the amount of money that she had spent on having it tested. So I don't want to make it sound like she was trying to make a buck off of that. But yeah, so what happened to these pieces? Well, Garry Nolan knows, and he's going to give us an update. So let's hear what he has to say. Get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like. Please subscribe. Hit the bell to be notified of future updates. Please join me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. And please share this video when it drops there on social media. And of course, comment below and let me know what you're thinking. All right, here goes. Here is what Garry has to say.
Metamaterials was this sample that apparently went to Art Bell years ago, was supposedly from a crash retrieval. It was then given to Linda Moulton Howe, and then I think TTSA subsequently bought it for like 35 grand to analyze, and Hal Puthoff did a whole presentation on it. And basically the sum of it, and I'm sure you're well aware and you can elaborate, but I couldn't believe that the way that this metal was created, the thinness of the layers, you know, the bismuth and magnesium, I think it was made from, had a different isotopic signature, something that didn't come from Earth per se. And they couldn't figure out what it would be used for, or who would want to make something like that. And that maybe even perhaps, I hope you're reaching for a sample of metamaterials right now. That would blow my mind. But long story short, they hypothesized that the way it was made would create a waveform of some sort, or like a wave guide. And that's perhaps how these craft move. So what can you tell us about metamaterials? I'm fascinated.
There's a piece of the material, and unfortunately you can't focus well
That's
enough.
the same metal I was just referencing?
Lean in and
Yeah, that's the one that this is a piece of the same material.
Yeah, multi-layered, right?
Layered material.
So how is something like that made? I mean, the thinness of it, the amount of layers. I know there's been other samples that are alloys with like 17 different base compound. Like, why would you go through the effort to make something like that? And they're definitely not being used currently. So what do you make of that?
Well, I'm not enough of a metallurgist to say why or how somebody would make it. But I have verified that in that one, the magnesium isotopes seem to be inverted. Instead of it being, let's say, 89, 11, and 9, it's 89, 9, and 11.
Yeah.
And, you know, but I'm not sure that there's not a good physical reason why the manner in which it was analyzed didn't give that inverted ratio, but somebody else had noted the same inverted ratio.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what it means, and I don't think it's necessarily proof of anything. You know, people say that they don't know how to make this again, but that doesn't mean that somebody didn't find a way to make it. You know, until you show that it has a function that you can't understand, then there's a good reason to believe that, or there's no good reason to believe that it was alien.
Right.
Let's say it that way. But one of the things that I will be doing on this is doing an atomic structure analysis of it. The reason why I took it out of I have it here is because I'm setting up to do just that analysis, and I took it out of the bank vaults where I keep all of my stuff. You know, because maybe that will give me a clue as to that it's made in a manner that's different than how others might make it.
Okay, that sounds intriguing because it is my understanding from the bismuth piece and others that they are perfectly arranged in these micro layers of metals, that when having these tiny layers, they interact with each other in a certain way to have interesting properties, like being a waveguide, having a waveguide function. I don't properly understand all of that, I'll be honest, but I have heard that they are so that the layers are so precisely lined up that it appears as though they were arranged atom by atom, which is insane. So, I would love for Garry Nolan. Of course, as he says, he's not a metallurgist, so he may or may not be able to provide a good analysis of that. But hopefully somebody that is a credentialed person that people will respect and listen to will analyze it and come forward talking about it. Of course, the bismuth piece that Linda Moulton Howe got from Art Bell and sold to TTSA has been said to be in the hands of the Army now, which is very unfortunate. The whole point of TTSA was to get this stuff out of the black ops and into the light, into the public purview. So it's very disappointing to have that now in the hands of the Army, but apparently they got their people and their best equipment to attempt to study it, the bismuth piece, and they couldn't make any headway because they didn't have sophisticated enough technology and the right people. So they partnered with the Army to study it, and it has vanished from the face of the earth. So I was kind of hoping that Garry would give us an update on that. Maybe he still will. This clip is 4 minutes and 30 minutes long. I hadn't planned on playing the whole thing, but he hasn't given us any juicy details yet. So let's see if he has anything to say about that.
Or that it's made somehow in a way that there's no comparable material on Earth. It doesn't mean that it is ET.
Yeah.
It just means that it's made. It's clearly a material that is made. It's an industrial process of some kind. But some people have suggested that stuff is just from the bottom of some smelting pot and the layers that occur in the smelting pot. I don't know. I know there's a huge chunk of it, and I know that TTSA has given it to the government, and I know actually quite a bit more about it that I can't talk about, and where it is and who has it now.
Okay, so that was what I wanted to know. That's why I did this video, was to find out where the business piece was, what the Army has been able to determine from it, and Garry knows, or at least he knows some of it, and he won't say. He also says where it is now. Does that mean it is no longer in the hands of the Army as it moved to somewhere else, or some subcategory of the Army, one of their black ops divisions or something? I don't know. The Army has been a lot more forthcoming on all of this than other places, especially the Air Force. It was the Army that, in the book The Day After Roswell, which I highly recommend, by Colonel Philip J. Corso. He was an Army guy, the right-hand man of General Trudeau, who was almost chosen to lead the war effort in Vietnam. But he was not, and when he was not, he eventually retired. But Colonel Corso was his right-hand man, and he was given command of the Roswell file, which is what the Army had on Roswell. Nobody has quite been able to explain this to me. I have not, because there was the advent of the Air Force as a separate body from the Army right around the time of Roswell. I'm not suggesting there was a connection there. I think it was on its way to that. But the Air Force seems to have gotten the bulk of the material from Roswell, including the ship itself, from what I understand, and presumably the bodies. But I think that it was actually Army personnel that were involved in that. So the Army got at least some of that, and some of that stayed with the Army. And Colonel Philip J. Corso and the people that ran the Roswell file before him had that material and had the analysis or analyses of that material in bodies. He had the report of the autopsy done on the being, or one of the beings. and a really fascinating chapter of that book, The Day After Roswell. He talks about how the brain was electromagnetically aligned, and the body seemed to be a created entity, a biological android, and it was made to interact with the suit that it wore. And the suit that it wore was made to interact with the field generated by the ship itself. So it was a very, very, very manufactured, a created being designed for a purpose and designed to interact with the ship. So very interesting, very interesting. Now, those beings at Roswell don't seem to have been a Greys exactly. They seem to differ from the Greys in several key aspects, the number of fingers, the shape of their head, and so on. But they are so similar that one has to wonder if there is a connection between those beings and the Greys, or if they were simply a different type of Greys, because the Greys are said to have engaged in much genetic engineering of themselves. And the taller Greys are said to be the true biological Greys, and the smaller Greys that most people see are the biological robots, at least is the common understanding. Anyway, all of which is to say that the Army has some stuff, and they had been farming these pieces out, this alien technology out to private companies, public companies, non-government companies, to reverse engineer this stuff. And that led to, our modern world, most particularly computers. The microtransistor was said to have come out of that, which allowed us to get out of the age of vacuum tubes and eventually into our modern computers. Totally revolutionized the world. Other things like, fiber optics and Kevlar and various other pieces of technology were said to come out of that. And that is because the Army was all about trying to get this technology out there and do the responsible thing with it, which is to help people and to further humanity. The Air Force, on the other hand, took this and broke away. Literally, that was right around the time when the Air Force was formed officially as a separate body from the Army. And as Richard Dolan says, it's the breakaway civilization. The control group, whoever was managing the UFO stuff, took what they had and other things as well, because of course there were UFO crashes before Roswell, like the Trinity crash. We had the Mussolini UFO that we acquired in 1945 at the end of World War II. So we had crashes before Roswell. The men in black were in place at Roswell. So, God knows how far all this goes back, but at least before Roswell, at least 1945. Anyway, all I would just say, the Army is more open and forthcoming about this, so I had hoped for better from them with the bismuth piece to be, talking about their results publicly, but they have not. And now Garry is saying that he can't even talk about it. Very frustrating. Let's listen to the last 20 seconds.
But
this is a much longer interview, by the way, but this is just a 4.5 minute clip.
I do know that it's about to be subjected to the full range of analysis techniques that it hasn't been subjected to before, or at least it's promised to be. I'm not going to be privy to the data. I just know that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they've been promising. They've been going to seriously analyze it for, I think it's been in the hands of the Army for a year or two. So I'm surprised that they are just now gearing up to examine it in more sophisticated ways. I assume that's the piece that Garry is talking about. Maybe he's talking about another piece. But anyway, so that is the current state of metamaterials, according to Garry Nolan, at least his evolving understanding of metamaterials. And I hope to hear from more. I think that the metamaterials themselves are fascinating, how people acquire them, how they seem to be discarded by UFOs, either as junk or as gifts. It's hard to say which one. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Please hit like, please subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Please join me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. I would love to see you there. And until next time, this is Jack with Cosmic Road signing out.